good afternoon, and welcome to the Real Talk Mission. I want to take this time out to thank Kennedy High School for hosting this event. Today's topic will be the undocumented students. My name is Ms. Valenzuela, and I will be your proctor for this evening. I want to take time to talk a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Ms. Valenzuela. I work at Eastside High School as a chairperson there in my capacity, and these are definitely challenges that our students are facing. At this time, I'm going to ask my panel to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. My name is Nedia, and I am a youth organizer at Make the Road, New Jersey. It is an immigrants' rights organization based in Elizabeth.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexi Velez. I'm a law fellow and attorney with the ACLU of New Jersey, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that helps people in asserting their civil liberties and civil rights.
Hi everyone, my name is Joanna Calle. I am the program coordinator for the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. We are a statewide coalition of organizations that work on immigrants' rights in the state.
Welcome, ladies, welcome. As I mentioned before, today's topic is the education of undocumented students. My first question is, what is the current challenge that undocumented students face today? And we're going to talk about two types of students: those that are in the public schools and those that are planning or are in universities.
Yeah, so I think the common misconception is that undocumented students or students with undocumented parents cannot go to college. That is totally untrue. If you are undocumented, or if you are not sure what your immigration status is and you are currently in high school, we do recommend that as soon as possible you go and find a lawyer or reach out to the ACLU organizations like Make the Road and have an immigration screening so you can find out exactly what your status is. If you are undocumented, there are colleges that have a need blind policy status, right? And so if a college calls themselves need blind, it means that that college does not look at status or your income or your family's income before they determine whether or not they're going to accept you. In addition to need blind colleges, there are also sanctuary colleges. These are colleges that have already made a statement following the election, this most recent election, that they will not work with immigration if they were ever to come on campus. So finding a college that is both need blind and pro-sanctuary is ideal for undocumented students. Additionally, while an undocumented or a DACA student is not eligible for federal aid, an undocumented student can access in-state tuition. A law was passed this past summer called the New Jersey Tuition Equality Act, and under that, as long as a student has graduated from a New Jersey public high school and can prove that they have tried to apply for lawful status, they can take advantage of in-state tuition at any public university in the state of New Jersey. Additionally, there are 4 major scholarships that offer undocumented students awards in excess of $25,000. Those are the Jack Kent Cooke Scholarship Foundation, the Questbridge Scholars, and there's 2 others that I'm forgetting. I'm sorry. 2 others that I will remember and get back to you on.
And I think that I can speak a little bit to what rights families with mixed statuses or parents who are undocumented or who have children that are undocumented might have to access K through 12 public education. And I think that it's important to remember that the law throughout the country is that students have a right to a basic education, a free basic public education. So you should certainly register your children for schools. They will have access to those schools, and the district should not be asking questions or demanding documentation that would be impossible for somebody who is undocumented to produce. So for example, a social security number or a driver's license should not be part of the registration process. And the ACLU is a great resource if you encounter something like that to make sure that your child or your student has access to education, which is their right.
And one thing I wanted to also flag, though, is that while we're talking about challenges of undocumented students, you also have the challenges of children who are U.S. citizens whose parents are undocumented. And that's a whole nother pocket of the student population that we also have to think about in terms of what challenges they're facing as well. So looking for, and if we can talk about that a little bit later, we can definitely do that.
I guess we answered the first two questions, so we're going to go ask, what's the DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program? And I think you began to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit, since I'm not an attorney, so I'm just going to preface that saying that I'm not an attorney. But basically what DACA is a deferred action for childhood arrivals. So it is a program that gives immigration status, lawful status. It is not permanent residency. It is not citizenship. It is a temporary status for students or children who have been brought here as children. There's specific things that you would have to qualify in order to qualify for that. So you have to have come to this country before a certain age, before a certain year. You have had to have been here in the country for a certain amount of time. So it's important for you to look at those qualifications, because not every child that has come from another country would automatically qualify. But that's what that is, and it's renewable every 2 years. And so that's basically what the current law is for those particular students.
Yes. Sorry, I can build on that a little bit. That's an excellent explanation of DACA, and I think that right now some of the concerns surrounding DACA are whether or not this temporary status is going to remain available. And unfortunately, I think the answer to that question is we're not sure. Right now, DACA still exists, but DACA was created as an executive order by a prior administration. So it's possible that DACA could stop existing at a certain point, and that can happen in any number of ways. So one thing might be that people who have DACA status will continue to have that status, and then there are any number of permutations of what might happen. But it's important to remember that because it is the product of an executive order, it can change more easily than some other types of immigration law. So that's something that we'll want to keep an eye out on.
And one thing that we have to note is a lot of our partners at the national level have been trying to find out what the recommendations are in terms of qualifying or applying for this program. So one recommendation that we've heard from them is if you have not applied for DACA before, you probably should be cautious about applying now, just because it is uncertain whether it will exist for a long time. It's uncertain whether it's going to be around. So you're better off just talking to an attorney and see if it makes sense for you to even apply in the first place. If you are already part of that program and you're just renewing your DACA, then talk to an attorney to make sure the renewal can go through and that you don't have any issues on the renewal. But there's less risk on that end in terms of renewing, because you've already been in the program rather than people who have not applied before.
And do many colleges or universities admit undocumented students?
So they do, yes. So it is to the college's discretion, right, whether or not they're going to make that choice. But you can certainly rely on the two tags, right? So if a college, you can typically find it on their website, where you can call the admissions office and you can ask, do you have a need-blind policy? And are you or is your student body a sanctuary school? And if the school falls into one of those two categories, it's a sure bet. If the concern is money, you definitely want to be applying to a need-blind college. They are more competitive, but the funding is much more universal.
Okay. You mentioned a sanctuary college. Can you explain a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So after the election, one of the promises of the campaign was that there would be wholesale mass deportations, right? And so there was fear amongst college campuses across the nation that ICE, Immigration Control and Enforcement, would access the registries on these colleges, and they would find out which students were undocumented. They would figure out where on campus these students live. They would track them down, and they would detain or deport or question them. Anything that could either be emotionally harmful or actually physical damage for the students, right? And so a group called Movimiento Cochesa, which translates into Harvest Movement, as a national grassroots organization, mobilized these colleges across the country, organized these undocumented students across these colleges, and they told their students to walk out and to petition and to rally and ask that the president of each of these schools call themselves a sanctuary school and publicly declare that they would never work with immigration if they were to come onto campus, right? So some of those schools actually include NJIT, they include Rutgers. These were some of the very first colleges that came forward and said, we refuse to work with immigration. So it's very exciting that some colleges have come out publicly in support. And to this day, there are schools that come out and say that they will adopt this policy. And so there are more than 100 currently that call themselves sanctuary schools.
One thing we probably have to clarify, though, is that because a school or a campus or a city or any of them call themselves sanctuary, that doesn't necessarily mean that immigration enforcement agents cannot enter. So this is really these policies really basically say, we will not help you, we will not work with you, we will not use our resources to help you do this, but federal agents can still enter these campuses. It's just that the colleges are basically saying they're not using their resources, their data, their information to work with these agencies. And you could also look at United We Dream. They actually have model policies that you can find if you're looking to pass that within your own campus, and they have a lot of training and resources for folks who want to try and do that.
And I think just building off of that, one thing that we should also be mindful of is that sanctuary doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to every municipal government. For example, it might not mean the same thing to every university. So I wonder if a great idea might be asking for the sanctuary policy of a university that you might be interested in so that you can compare and contrast and see what benefits you get.
Are there any state laws which bar undocumented students from going to public colleges or universities?
No. Right now, the policy at the state level is the one about the in-state tuition, but they can't really bar you. I mean, if it's a private college, that might be a little different in terms of their own policies, but they can't bar you from attending. But it really comes down to you having these conversations with the colleges and finding out more about their own policies, because it might come down to money more than actually getting accepted.
Sorry, I'll also add, so this is a little bit of an aside, but if you are trying to pursue your GED or know somebody who's trying to pursue their GED and is undocumented, as long as you have whatever it costs to sit and take the exam, you cannot be denied from a school administering it. Regardless of what their policy is, they must allow you to sit and take the GED if you have, if you've taken the GED course and if you have the money to take it. Nobody can ask you what your documentation status is in order to sit for the exam.
With that, what should an undocumented student and their family consider when planning for college? I guess, what other steps, what should they be doing year by year of their high school time?
Yeah, so I think it is incredibly important that as early as your freshman year, you are creating a relationship with your teachers, you are doing well in school, that you are getting an immigration screening so that you have total clarity about what your status is or what other statuses you might be eligible for, right? So, while DACA is not in limbo, but there is an uncertainty about whether one should be applying now, there are other forms of status that you may qualify for, right? Like special juvenile status. And going into your junior and senior year, I know that at least in the EPS district, right, it is sort of everybody takes the SAT. Your student might want to, or your child might want to be considering alternative forms of standardized testing, such as the ACT. These sort of play up to a different sort of skill set that make you a stronger candidate, right? There is also a lot of I think people typically get discouraged, right? They are low income, they're undocumented, and they think that their chances of getting into college are less. That is totally untrue. It's actually quite the opposite, right? You have an incredibly special and moving story about this plight of having traversed two worlds and having come up on top, and living in a disenfranchised and underserved community actually makes you a much stronger candidate for elite colleges.
Okay, and with laws and policy, are there, what new or current laws protect undocumented students? And again, we want to talk about the public school student and then also the university student.
So, as I mentioned before, the public schools is something that the ACLU is most involved in protecting the rights of access to for all students, whether or not they might be documented, whether or not their parents have any immigration status. whatsoever. So that is something that is universally available to students, and that's something that is not just specific to New Jersey. So it's a United States Supreme Court case that says that students have the right to this education, and here in New Jersey, we will make sure that you have access to that without any hurdle that would be unfair or difficult to overcome if you do not have citizenship, even if you have some other immigration status. That's something that the ACLU can help with.
Okay. All right, we're going to move to dealing with law enforcement and suggestions for that. My first question is, what rights does the family have when dealing with law enforcement, and what should they tell their children?
Sure, I think that we can maybe work together on how to best answer this. So I think that first and foremost, it's important to know that regardless of status, everyone has certain civil rights when interacting with law enforcement, whether that's ICE, whether that's local law enforcement, the FBI, any law enforcement entity. We all have civil liberties and we have civil rights that we are entitled to by virtue of being here, and it is not dependent on our status. However, depending on the law enforcement agency that you're dealing with, or where geographically you may be dealing with law enforcement, those rights may change a little bit. So, for example, traveling internationally at an airport might implicate different rights than if a local police officer were to stop you while driving a vehicle. I think generally, in terms of the regular police department, which is the type of law enforcement that we might be most likely to deal with, it's important to know that you have the right to remain silent, and that unless questions about your status are relevant to whatever law enforcement may be investigating, local law enforcement should not be asking questions about status generally. And regardless of what law enforcement agency you're dealing with, students and their families have the right to remain silent and not answer those questions without having consultation with an attorney.
Yeah. And the other thing that we have to really stress to community members is that you don't have to tell anybody anything, and that's the beauty of the Constitution. And so the reality is that immigration law enforcement will use any information you give them to figure out if they could deport you, if they should deport you, if they should deport anyone around you. And so it's really important for you to not start explaining your immigration status. Don't get into talking about where you came from. Don't get into your current application status. Just avoid any kind of conversation that could trigger them understanding your immigration status and then using that against you. So you're better off just remaining silent and making sure that you have a plan at home. You're better off planning for your family to know what's going on, your family to remember phone numbers in case your phone gets taken away from you. Make sure that your family knows exactly where you are, that they know not to open the door when you're at home, that you have this preparation at home in case they come to your home or in case they see anyone else in your family. So it really comes down, I would urge you to get in contact with organizations like Make the Road New Jersey and others that are actually doing Know Your Rights sessions across the state, where you can learn your rights, know exactly what to do, prepare. That's really sort of the best thing that you can do. It's like you're preparing for a hurricane or a flood or whatever, just that's really what it is. And it's not about panicking, because panicking is not gonna help you. It's really thinking through what it is you have to do to prepare.
And I think that you made an important point there about, preparation is never going to be a bad thing. So if you have plans in place in the event that something happens, you're better prepared in the event that it happens. It doesn't mean that it's going to, but it's nice to know that you have a plan for your family, and everyone has discussed what the steps will be in the event that you are encountering immigration enforcement, for example. One thing that I wanted to say with regard to civil rights is that while you have certain civil rights, it's really important that you stay calm. You say that you are exercising those rights, but that you always make a decision about your own safety and what might be the best decision in the moment. If you feel that you've had a violation of your rights, you can always contact an organization like the ACLU or any of the direct legal services immigration organizations, and we can help you get redress after the fact, but always being mindful of safety in that moment.
Okay. What particular legal considerations are relevant to people who are undocumented when dealing with law enforcement?
I think that's a lot of it, but I think you were also talking a little bit about what considerations might be relevant when somebody shows up at your home, and I think those are really important.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in that particular case, you have the right to close the door, not open the door to anyone. They don't have the right to just come in. They have to have a arrest warrant from a judge. So you have to be really mindful of the fact that they might say, hey, we're here to pick up so-and-so. Well, so-and-so doesn't live here. I don't have to open the door to let you know that they don't live here. If they do have a warrant, they could slide it under the door. So you can actually check whether your name is even on that warrant. Unfortunately, ICE doesn't have the best reputation of following constitutional law. And so they are known for saying that they're police when they're not. They're known for telling you they're for someone that's not there and then using that to get in. They have used collateral damage. They use that within their own internal documentation, which means they come for one and take everyone else. And so that's why it's really important for you to know you do have the right to close that door. You don't have to open that door for them at all. And make sure that everyone in your family knows that, so that they know that there's this protocol, right? When someone knocks on the door, you don't just open it without asking. If someone knocks on the door and they say it's police, maybe you're not sure. Well, that's the beauty of having good relationships with your local police, that you can actually call and say, hey, it seems like police is outside. Is it really the police? And the police might say, actually, we didn't send anyone. And now you know, and that's where it's really important for you all to trust your local police if they've implemented policies where you can talk to them, so that you can protect yourself in cases like that.
And I think speaking to warrants that might be presented if immigration enforcement shows up at your home, it's important to realize that there are two different types of warrants. So one type, which is a warrant that's generated by the Immigration Enforcement Authority, does not give immigration enforcement the right to enter the home, as opposed to a warrant that's signed by a judge that gives more permission. I think a great way to sort of exercise your rights is if somebody comes to your door and says they have a warrant, ask if you can speak with your attorney then. You can have them slide it under the door so you can look at it and get a better idea of what you're dealing with without opening the door and letting people in. And like you said, it's so important to make sure that especially children in the home know not to let anybody in, because once you've allowed law enforcement into the home, your civil liberties have changed in that context. So making sure everybody knows.
So I mean, I would rely on Alexi and Joanna on this, but I was also recommended to me that if immigration is to come into the house for whatever reason, never present fake papers and try to, talk your way out of it. You should. It's best to say nothing. Yes. And say, I want to speak to my lawyer, right? Even if you don't have a lawyer. That's right. And if you are in the street, to never present a passport from your country of origin, nothing that associates you with anything that could be collateral later on, right? And so just saying, again, it's better to say nothing, and I'd rather speak to my lawyer, even if you're picked up and taken away, even if you don't have a lawyer.
That's right. Yeah, running or presenting fake documents are just probably one of the few really worst things you could do in that situation. You have to stay calm, and that's where training and practice really comes in. You have to practice it, make it sort of a thing that you do all the time, right? We have fire drills for a reason. That's kind of the same thing. You have to just practice and know what you can do. That's where touching base with the organizations, grassroots organizations like Make the Road and others are so important, because they have these trainings all the time, so you can practice what that's like. And some of these trainings even include showing you a sample of a warrant, so you actually become really familiarized with what they look for and what they look at, rather than you just being shocked when they come to your home.
So in what situations should you disclose your immigration status to law enforcement?
So I think the not showing your foreign documents is actually key, because immigration will use that to determine whether they should deport you. If you're walking around with a foreign passport, it automatically sends a red flag to them that you might not be a US citizen, right? That's not necessarily true. Many of us have dual citizenship, and many of us have foreign passports. That's not necessarily true, but you don't want to create a situation where they suddenly feel like they can ask more and do more, so you're better off just not showing that. If you are a documented a green card holder or a citizen, then you might actually have to disclose that information in order to avoid having to, because they could arrest you for not knowing what your status is, if they want to. I mean, and so that's where showing your immigration status means that they know what to do with that. They can still maybe arrest you, but then you can fight back, and you can get an attorney right away and work through that, rather than expediting stuff because they now know where you are. So that's where the showing foreign documents is key. Don't do that. And I'm sure the attorney has more.
Yeah, I think all of that is really excellent advice, and the sort of, if you can remember one thing at the end of the day, it's that you don't have to answer these questions. You don't have to start producing any documentation at all. You should exercise your right to remain silent. Say so, politely say so, but then ask for an attorney, even if you don't yet have one. And that way you can make sure that you're making the best decisions about what you disclose and what you produce. And since I know that we are on Facebook Live, I will also invite you to look at the ACLU national Facebook page, because we have a number of great videos that show people acting out these situations and give you the non-lawyerly scoop on your best bet for these interactions.
And actually, adding to that, the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice Facebook actually has a photo, an album of Know Your Rights cards that you can actually print at home and carry them with you. They're little pocket cards, and basically it has a little piece, they have them in different languages, and then one little piece of that card you can tear up, and it says, "Dear officer, I have the Fifth Amendment right not to speak to you, and I don't want to speak to you right now, I need a lawyer." That way you don't even have to say anything, you just give them that little piece of paper and call it a day. So you can look it up at New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice on Facebook.
Okay. I also want to talk to you ask about what can educators, teachers, administrators, how can we support our undocumented students? Again, we know we have a responsibility as public school employees, but this topic comes up in classrooms. It comes up everywhere, and
yeah, no, I appreciate the honesty. So yeah, I think now teachers have probably been more pressed than ever to become activists, and I think there's a lot of work to be done, right? And so there's if a student, the second home is typically the classroom, and so a teacher can be advocating that the district is providing more professional development opportunities, so teachers and guidance counselors can learn about what opportunities are or what resources are available to both students and families in the case that they are undocumented, whether it be college access resources or whether it be community resources, right? So something that Make the Road New Jersey does is we meet with guidance counselors in the district and we provide that sort of education and that training. Another piece is advocating that your local Board of Education call itself a sanctuary school district, right? So we talked about it earlier about how colleges were adopting these languages. So too can some Board of Educations, right? So they can sort of underline the importance of and their commitment to not working with immigration, even though this is a law that's already in practice. It can encourage other undocumented students to come forward because they can feel like the community is rallied around them, that they are safe in the place where they go and study every day, and they don't have to feel fearful when they go home and think that maybe their parent isn't home or on the way, that immigration might stop them on the way because they have sanctuary right ahead in front of them.
And one thing I'll add is also, as educators, I used to be an educator myself, it's really educate yourself about the resources available, right? Because you don't want to be in a situation where a student comes to you and you might not know what to say or do, and you don't want to say the wrong thing either. You don't have to know everything, and that's okay, but it's good for you to say, you know what, I don't know that, and I can look for resources that can help us go through this together. I think that in and of itself is enough for a student who's undocumented. It is a coming out process. Sometimes the first people you come out to are your teachers, and then you really are looking for emotional support on that first. Understand that they're okay with going through this journey with you, and that really means a lot to them. So,
is there any
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in, yes, so just like Joanna said, right, the undocumented community, the ESL community, right, is a very niche community, right? Typically, these high school students travel in packs when they're in high school, right? And so if a student has expressed that they have had a bad interaction with a teacher, now maybe 20 or 30 students know that, and they will probably be more intimidated about coming forward about their status and seeking the resources that they so desperately need in order to go to college or be successful, whatever they do post high school.
I know we're live on Facebook, and you gave us some wonderful resources, and I would like for you to repeat them in Spanish, please.
So do you want to? Oh, okay. So the Facebook page is New Jersey, so it's NJ Immigrant justace.org es la website y esa es la misma página de Facebook. Entonces la página de Facebook es NJ Alliance for Immigrant Justice, so NJ Alianza de Justicia Inmigrante en New Jersey. Ustedes pueden buscarlo ahí en el Facebook y pueden ver ahí hay un álbum que tiene las tarjetas de derechos que ustedes pueden imprimir en su casa y pueden andar en su bolsillo, en su cartera, para que puedan dar eso a cuando ustedes tienen alguna clase de cuando hablen con un policía. Y la otra que dijimos fue, what was the other one that we mentioned? Y la organización, la ACLU Nacional, es una organización de derechos civiles nacionales. Entonces ellos tienen unos videos que están hablando sobre cómo usted puede hablar con un policía y les enseñan. Entonces ustedes pueden ver exactamente lo que está pasando y informarse y ver los videos. Eso también les puede ayudar en eso. I wonder if United We Dream is also really good. So United We Dream es Soñamos Juntos es la organización, se llama United We Dream, es hecho por jóvenes y esa organización tiene igual muchos recursos, tienen videos especialmente para los estudiantes y para los jóvenes, igual en Facebook y tienen sus páginas también.
Thank you. Excuse me. So where can family go to learn more about education, supporting their kids? Their undocumented students.
Yeah, so I will give a quick plug for Make the Road New Jersey, right? So we at Make the Road New Jersey have, we're an immigrants' rights organization, right? And so we are constantly hosting campaigns. Every Thursday night at 7 o'clock, we host a Know Your Rights training. So what Alexi and Joanna just went over, right? So what to do if immigration were to stop you in the street, at your door, at school, at the workplace. We run over those skits every Thursday night. That Facebook page, again, is Sasa Camino Nova Jersey. And we also provide resources to young people, right? So if you're a high school student, if you are in middle school, if you are interested in going to college, if you are interested in an immigration screening, you can always reach out to Make the Road New Jersey.
And then another one is probably, I'm trying to think of, United We Dream is really good. I think also touching base with any organization near you. There are a lot of grassroots organizations across the state that work with communities, and so you can always go to njimmigrantjustice.org. We have a list of all of our member organizations. They are statewide. Many of them are small, some of them are big, but they are running these kind of events all the time. So educate yourself, touch base with advocates near you. If you don't know, just email one of us, and then we'll find a path for you to help you and put you in touch with someone that can help.
And I think also in terms of resources, all of these excellent Know Your Rights opportunities, ACLU also, is a member organization of the Alliance, but also does them. So you have the opportunity to call so many organizations to get free presentations where you need them, and we try to respond as quickly as we can. But I also just wanted to point to the fact that there are a lot of organizations that provide direct legal services with regard to immigration. So in the event that you have questions about your status, about possibly getting some immigration benefit, you should feel super empowered to look up what organizations are providing free direct legal services, and there are a number throughout the state. The Alliance is a great place to sort of find those organizations and match yourself up with one.
Yeah, and one thing actually that reminds me of is be careful with who you're getting legal services from. There are people out there who are taking advantage of immigrant communities. They will tell you that they can help you when they can't. They will charge you for help that's not real. If you're not getting copies of your documentation of your file or whatever it is they're working in, there's something a little fishy. So you're better off working with organizations that are established, that have been doing low-cost legal services, making sure that you do that. The other thing lately that we've been hearing about is these power of attorneys for children, for care of children. Parents are filling out these forms that say, I want my cousin, my friend, my neighbor to take care of my child if I get picked up. That is something you can do, but make sure you're doing it with someone who knows what they're doing with that document and someone who's not charging you, because it has to be notarized. But a notary, you can go to the bank or the post office and get that for $10. Not for $150, not for $200. If someone's charging you $300 to write a letter about the guardianship of your children, don't do it. Find someone who can help you that won't charge you an arm and a leg for something like that.
You talked before when I asked you the question about the Alliance. I was wondering if you can repeat that same information in Spanish. you wanted to, when I asked you about where can they go to support their undocumented students, I was wondering if you can give out, you were talking about the Great Alliance.
If you make
Right.
classes. I can do it. I mean, yeah, sure. So, la organización Se Hace Camino New Jersey está diciendo reuniones cada jueves. Las reuniones son en Elizabeth. Se llama Se Hace Camino Nueva Jersey. Entonces, ellos hacen entrenamientos de conocer sus derechos y también ellos tienen reuniones donde hablan con los estudiantes para ayudarles sobre ayuda financiera, sobre cómo pueden aplicar a la universidad. Entonces, es bueno que ustedes conozcan a esa organización, pero también hay muchas organizaciones en todo el estado. Entonces, si ustedes quieren, ustedes pueden buscar a la organización njimmigrantjustice.org y pueden ustedes buscar en esa website. Hay una lista de todas las organizaciones que ustedes pueden buscar porque hay muchas en todo el estado.
All right, thank you. I have a few questions from the audience. One is, what would happen if a parent who has minor, kids who are underage, gets pulled over, gets arrested, gets in trouble with the law, and they are undocumented, but the student is not?
So I think this is something we probably can best answer together, but I think the first thing to be aware of is the priority, which is that you're not going to be detained and your child left alone. So some measure will be taken. We recommend coming up with a plan yourself so that when a state agency might get involved, like DCF, Department of Children and Families gets involved, you have a plan for temporary guardianship in place. That was what Joanna was talking about, where you should go to one of these organizations, fill it out, and have it notarized, but probably not go to a notario for the legal advice, who might not be an attorney and give you the best advice. But your children will be taken care of. The best advice that we can give basically is to have a plan for how that's going to happen so it happens the way that you want it to happen in the best way for your family.
Yeah. And that particular thing is state specific. So if you have a friend in New York that said, I have this form, can't use it. New Jersey law specifically changes in terms of guardianship of a child. So you have to make sure you're using the New Jersey form. And then the other thing is, don't drive without a license. Don't put yourself in a situation where you might get picked up for something as minor as that, because unfortunately minor offenses or minor interactions with the law could end up being the pathway to getting you in sort of ICE's radar. And so you're better off just do not drive without a license, do not have vacation with you, just avoid those things in order to, better prepare. And then, as we said, just have a plan. It's kind of like a will or an emergency plan. You have all those documents ready at home. Everyone knows exactly who's going to take care of the children. Everyone knows what to do. And law enforcement officers are supposed to know. If you tell them, I have a child, they're supposed to know to suddenly take care of your case in a different way than if you don't have children. I wouldn't say, by the way, my aunt is already ready to take care of my child. Don't say that. They need to understand that their children depending on you to come home.
And I think that that's an important point about once you have those documents, what you do with them. So in addition to potentially like a temporary guardianship agreement that you might have, there are other practical things that you can have, making a list of what medications people might need, especially your children, making sure that you have emergency contacts for the schools, for people that can be reached in the event that your children need to be picked up from school potentially. And I
Travel
think,
documents.
yes.
Right? If you have U.S. citizen children who don't have a passport, who don't have a birth certificate at home, go get those passports and those birth certificates now so you have them, because you want to be able to have a plan and say, you know what, if I happen to be deported, I want my children to come with me. But if those children don't have everything that you need for them, to get a passport for a U.S. citizen child, the parent has to be present. It can't be the person you've left in charge. And so that's why you've heard on the news this uptick in county offices to get passports. It's because of that.
And one thing that we had talked about before starting our conversation today was that when you have this information, this is something that you give to the person who is going to be taking care of your children at that time. You keep in a safe place in the home, but it is not something that you need to be disclosing to immigration or law enforcement. In fact, you don't want to do that. So this plan is for in the event that something like that happens, which hopefully you never have to use. But those documents are not for immigration enforcement to help you with. Those are your documents for your own plans for your family.
And given the memos, we know that immigration enforcement is sort of trying to change the priorities of how they enforce immigration. So if you've been here for less than they're going to ask they're going to check how long you've been here. So it's probably good for you to have proof at home that you have been here for many years, so that your attorney, when you call them, have that documentation. Don't give that to ICE, just so that you start gathering that proof in case they start questioning how long you've been here.
Okay, great. And keeping with the topic of law enforcement, do they have the right to go through your belongings?
Right. So there are a lot of questions about when you can be searched, and we talked a little bit about when somebody can even enter the home, and the fact that you don't necessarily have to let that happen unless there's a search warrant signed by a judge that says that they can. If you are arrested or detained, your possessions could possibly be searched incident to that arrest, and the things that you have in your possession then might be subject to that. However, if you are picked up, outside of the home, that would not give immigration enforcement any right to come in and search your possessions inside your home. They would need a warrant to be able to do that, and without that, no, you do not have to worry about that. But again, it's a matter of making sure that you exercise your rights when people are at the door also, so that they don't have the opportunity to come in without the right to do so.
And for you to say, I don't consent to this search. I'm not allowing you to search that. And even if they try and do that, you've verbalized that you do not consent to that search. That's really important for people. That's why the conversation of getting picked up outside when you're walking down the street, leave the foreign passport at home. Just avoid that in the first place. If you carry it with you, they might search you and then suddenly it's there. So it's really being safe about that.
Okay. I have several education questions. We actually have someone in the audience, Ms. Tiffany Shepard, who's an educator and also works for a nonprofit organization. And she would like to know, do you offer any kind of professional development? Do you come into schools to train educators?
Yes, so I can definitely answer that. So Make the Road absolutely does do that. We do host classroom presentations where we actually go into classrooms, and we take about a week to go throughout a whole school. We give a Know Your Rights presentation, so we're actually educating students about what they should be doing if immigration comes, what role do they play, and how they should be they can be educating their parents and the people that live in the household. And then we do talk about what are college opportunities for them. We do the same thing for faculty and staff. So it can be on request, or it can be if you are on Make the Road's radar and we track you down and we ask you if we can give presentations in the neighborhood. But absolutely, if you want us, we want to be there. We definitely want to give those presentations.
And the Alliance for Immigrant Justice, we actually had a webinar yesterday for educators in partnership with NJ Core and United We Dream, and we went through the rights of educators in terms of supporting their students and also what they could do in the classroom and the rights of students themselves. So we're actually going to be putting that recording on our website, and you can find it there and watch it again and listen to us talk about that.
And we have two questions left. They're both the same. We want to talk about the scholarships and really the roadmap to college. And somebody asked about resources, so I'm going to ask that if you can also say it in Spanish as well, the specific resources. Who does they go to? What are our guidance counselors being trained? Where should they go?
So if you are not having, and I'm going to recruit Joanna as my translator. Thanks,
I'm here.
So if you, of course, so first things first, right? Go to your guidance counselor, and your fingers crossed, you're hoping for the best relationship, right, and the best response that they're saying. These are the options that you have as an undocumented student or as a student of undocumented parents, right?
So, si tú vas a hablar con tu concejal en la escuela, uno de tus consejeros, hablar con ellos y esperar que tengas una buena relación con ellos para que ellos te den la información correcta.
If they say there are no options for you, or they don't give you an answer that you're comfortable with, absolutely go onto New Jersey Alliance for Justice website, or come to Make the Road New Jersey and find a local immigrants' rights organization that definitely can point you in the right direction.
Si ellos te dicen que no tienes ninguna opción, que no puedes ir a la universidad, que no te pueden ayudar, trata de buscar a una organización comunitaria que te pueda ayudar, como Make the Road New Jersey, se hace Camino Nueva Jersey, o ir a la Alianza a buscar información ahí, porque te podemos ayudar para que tengas la información correcta.
And again, so I'm going to go back earlier. I mentioned the 4 scholarships that are available to undocumented students that are in excess of $25,000. Those are the Jack Ken Cook Scholarship Foundation. Those are that's the Questbridge Scholarship, the Dream.US Scholarship, and the Davis Putter Scholarship. All undocumented students are eligible for these scholarships. In addition, you want to be applying to need-blind colleges. Make the Road New Jersey does offer scholarship and college application support, so we walk with you throughout the process through matriculation, because we do want to make sure that you're submitting in successful applications.
Entonces hay 4 becas que están abiertas para estudiantes indocumentados. You're going to walk me through those scholarships one more time, each one.
Jack Ken Cook.
Jack Ken Cook, C-O-O-K, es una de las becas. La otra es Questbridge, es B-R-I-D-G-E.
Dream.US.
Dream.US, so D-R-E-A-M.U-S.
And Davis Putter.
Y Davis Putter, P-U-T-T-E-R. Esas son las 4 becas que están abiertas para estudiantes indocumentados, y también tienen que asegurarse que apliquen a universidades que no chequeen estatus migratorio para aplicar. Entonces esas universidades van a básicamente aceptarlos basado en su récord educativo y no van a estar chequeando estatus migratorio antes de aceptarlos.
And so also mention that in your district, right, typically the Board of Education, they host scholarships. They are for a lot, they can be $1,000 to $5,000, but those can help pay for a semester or pay for books, right? These are all options that are available to you, so you should be asking your guidance counselor about what scholarships are available locally or within the district.
Entonces, y me olvidé decir también que se hace Camino Nueva Jersey también tiene un programa donde ellos les ayudan a hacer las aplicaciones de becas y a la universidad, so pueden ir a la organización para que les ayude, pero encima de eso, dentro de la escuela tienen becas, entonces vayan a sus consejeros y pregúntenles sobre esas becas, porque a veces esas becas son privadas, entonces no necesitan estatus migratorio, a veces son pequeñas, $500, $200, pero si cogen un poquito pueden pagar por los libros o por otras cosas.
And one last thing, sorry. We do have a scholarship event coming up on March 23rd in Elizabeth at 7 p.m. And we will walk through those 4 scholarships. We'll walk through a number of others that are, again, in excess of $25,000. And we'll talk about how do you make yourself the best candidate for those applications.
Y Se hace Camino Nueva Jersey está teniendo un evento el 23 de marzo donde ellos van a hablar de esas becas específicamente y para hablar exactamente cómo pueden uno aplicar para poder calificar.
And finally, what advice can you give to parents of undocumented students and people who are undocumented, period, whether they have kids, whatnot?
So one advice I've been giving is organize. I know that it's scary, I know that it's a little nerve-wracking, but the reality is that if you are by yourself at home and you are not connecting with other community members, with other advocates, with people who are gonna have your back, then you're gonna be in a position where something might happen and you might not have people behind you. So organize as much as possible, educate yourself as much as possible, and prepare as much as possible.
And I think the community that you have available to you is probably much bigger than you know. So all of these organizations that we mentioned today, going beyond just your local community and finding out what resources are available to you, oftentimes for free, is excellent. If you have an immigration question that is specific to your status, I would always recommend speaking to an immigration attorney, whether that is a pro bono attorney that you can get at no or low cost, or a private attorney that you hire, making sure that you are informed about all of the relief that you might have available to you. And lastly, just remembering that we all have our civil liberties, regardless of status, and that your rights are important, regardless of status.
Yeah, so I will also mention for the young people in the audience and for the young people who are watching us on Facebook Live, right? So first and foremost, before you're undocumented, you're 17 and 18 years old and you're a teenager and you're applying to college and it's a very exciting time. And so you should bask in that, right? And so we are here to support you. We think that your stories are incredible and you're brave, and we want to help you throughout the college process.
At this time, I want to say thank you to our panel, Ms. Kaje, Ms. Velez, and Ms. Morsi. Thank you so much for your information. I'm sure it was very valuable. And thank you to Patterson Public Schools for hosting this. Thank you, Mr. McDowell.